What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics. Thanks so much for being with me. We're going to talk about how to formulate killer nootropic stacks that actually work. I'm going to give you my personal framework and the framework that I use when I'm consulting big business people on formulating nootropic stacks, and the framework that you should use when you're trying to formulate nootropic stacks for particular tasks. In the meantime, if you want access to a high potency nootropic stack, expert level information on formulating and stacking nootropics for best results, or to work with myself, the world's foremost expert on energy and brain performance hacking, check out the following. Number one, Cortex Nootropic Stack, our flagship product. Cortex turns on mental energy, verbal fluency, motivation. It was built for entrepreneurs initially, but anybody can use it to really turn on brain function. You can buy it at livecortex.com, get it on subscription, and you get Smarter, Better, Faster, a digital book that teaches you how to use nootropics and gives you many stacks for free. Get Cortex, livecortex.com. There are 3 different echelons of video courses that teach you very high-level detailed information about how to get the best effects from nootropics, and they are the following. If you're brand new to nootropics, Nootropics Ground Zero, okay? That's the course that you have to get if you're brand new. If you're in a year or so, or even 6 months, but you just want to ascend to the 6-year mark, which is defined as the master class, I mean, you get better results at that level, and you know more about how to stack and get results. Get the Nootropics Masterclass. If you want the highest level of video courses that exists on the planet right now, we're talking about the 10 to 15 year mark and using nootropics. Get the Nootropics God course. These are all video courses that really are based on where you are in using nootropics and ultimately where you want to go. Get those at livecortex.com. Lastly, if you'd like to have me formulate your energy regimen, your daily regimen, your sleep regimen, your testosterone regimen, design a nootropic regimen that's complex and targeted to your brain, work with you ongoingly on a support capacity to dial in your entire regimen, we've got programs for that at livecortex.com on the consulting tab on the menu. Okay, how to formulate killer nootropic stacks that actually work. In order for us to do this, I've got to give you the framework, the basic framework for how to formulate killer nootropic stacks, and then we'll get into the 5,000-foot view of a specific example of a stimulant energy and processing enhancement nootropic stack. So here's the basic framework. The basic framework is formulation, adjustment, so adjusting the doses on the stack to reach perfection, and then finalization. Those are the 3 steps in the framework to formulating killer nootropic stacks. Now I want to break all of those down. Okay, so let's start from formulation. Formulation is obviously you putting together various nootropic chemicals to reach the endpoint of a good stack. There are a few questions you have to ask yourself right away when going into formulation, and the most primary of them is, what is my target? What is the target? Okay, is your target motivation with some working memory? Okay, that's a very specific stack, and that will drive what chemicals you put into the stack. Is your target just a whole lot of stimulant energy and some extra processing? That's the stack we're going to talk about here. Is your target just focus? Everything else is pretty fine, but you just need to focus. You've got to define your target, because then looking at the roster of nootropic chemicals that we all have at our fingertips to make brain performance better, we now have a better idea of which compounds to select because we have a target, right? It's like you can't hit targets you can't see. So formulating a target and understanding what exactly you're trying to achieve with a stack is really step 1. So we're going to do an example of the target being a stack with the target being stimulant energy plus processing enhancements. Okay, stimulant energy plus processing enhancement. First, before we get into the stack, I will say, because this is entirely too long to go through right now, work on your baseline energy. Always be working on the baseline energy, whether that is related to your diet, your sleep, your test, or whatever. Optimizing hormone profile, whatever it needs to be, reducing inflammation. You must work on your baseline energy because your response to nootropics is going to be substantially greater when you do. Okay, so we decided we were going to do a stimulant energy plus processing enhancements stack. So let's look at the first sector of that, stimulant energy, stimulant energy. Okay, you break stacks down like this by looking at each individual component of what you're trying to achieve. For stimulant energy, you'd be looking at the following compounds: alcar, theobromine, teacrine, caffeine, artichoke extract, uridine, CDP choline, tyrosine or NALT, and then phenylpiracetam. Okay, just to make it simple. Those compounds are what you'd want to look at when you're trying to achieve one part of the stack, which is stimulant energy. Processing. This is the second part of the stack. Which chemicals are you going to select to bring into this stack? For the sake of keeping it simple, we're going to couch it as aniracetam, oxiracetam, Noopept, and PRL853. These are processing-centered chemicals. Not necessarily going to stimulate you to like a major degree, but they will help you when you're in the really detailed low-level elements of what you're doing. Okay, so now you've got your two categories. You want stimulant energy and processing enhancements, and you have your list of compounds to select from to achieve that. So now you're going to your stack. Now we're going to pick particular compounds from those lists, like my own individual formulation of a stack, just to give you one example, but you have all of those options. Before you start stacking, the first principle to keep in mind is to start low and work your way up. Start low and work your way up. Forget everything you've learned. In fact, delete what you've learned about nootropics if you haven't learned it from this channel or with this methodology. Because most folks coming into nootropics are stacking entirely too high to begin with. They have no room to move up thereafter, and they set themselves up for almost immediate downregulation of the response, tolerance essentially. You want to start low so that you have the room to work ingredient doses up if you need to reach finalization. That is very important. All right, so let's start with the stimulant energy compounds that we're going to put into this stack. So out of the compounds that we discussed above that are stimulant energy centered, I selected NALT, theobromine, teacrine, and caffeine. That's what we selected for stimulant energy, okay? And we're going to situate the stack using the principle of starting low and working your way up. Thus, 100 milligrams of NALT, 50 milligrams theobromine, 50 milligrams teacrine, and then we're going to have a cup of coffee at the administration of the stack. Okay, cup of coffee at the admin of the stack. This covers the stimulant energy part of what we're trying to achieve, the target. Remember, back to the target, stimulant energy plus processing. Okay, so we've got that situated. Now we're going to formulate the second part of the stack, the processing element of the stack. Okay, so what I'm going to pick is oxiracetam and Noopept. Okay, two chemicals from the processing reservoir, oxiracetam and Noopept, and I'm going to dose them the following: 7 milligrams of Noopept, 400 milligrams of oxiracetam. It's important to note what I did in this stack is if you're stacking either multiple racetams or multiple processing-centered stacks, you want to medium dose them first. Maybe you'll go up to full doses at some point, but you don't want to start at full doses. And ultimately, the medium dose stacks with combining a couple racetams or racetams and another processing-centered nootropic compound, you end up doing better when you medium dose them. So we've gone with 7 milligrams of Noopept and 400 milligrams of oxiracetam. And now we have our stack, okay? So the stack is 100 milligrams of NALT, 50 milligrams theobromine, 50 milligrams teacrine, 7 milligrams Noopept, 400 milligrams oxiracetam. You can add a choline source if you're someone who requires a good degree of choline. If you are going to do that, I'd be going with between 50 and 75 milligrams of either CDP choline or alpha GPC. So let's call it 50 milligrams CDP choline. And then you are going to drink coffee, a cup of coffee, with the admin of the stack. So after you take the stack, or right before you take the stack, while the stack is starting to affect you, drink a cup of coffee, okay? So this is our stack that we've just formulated through having a target, identifying the layers of the stack, what we're trying to achieve, stimulant energy in this case, and then processing enhancements on top of that. We selected from a group of chemicals that are basically stimulant energy centered chemicals and put them in a stack. or put them in a formulation, and then selected from a group of chemicals that are processing centered, and then put them in a formulation and added them together, and now we have our stack. But so if you administer that stack, which would be the next step, administer your stack, drink your coffee, go to town, monitor how it affects you. Monitor how it affects you. If your first formulation, which if you've gotten the Nootropics Masterclass or the Nootropics God course, should be pretty on point, because those courses teach you how to formulate pretty bulletproof stacks in the first step. And if not, you've got adjustments thereafter. But if you understand the methodology broken down in those courses, your first stab at it's going to be pretty good. So say you take that stack and it is in fact pretty good. But just as an example, because you focused on stimulant energy, pretty hardcore in this stack, it's making your focus not so good, right? Maybe you're just like not able to hone in and dial in on what you're working on. That's just one example of a negative in the stack that you would want to adjust a compound to eliminate. Maybe it isn't messing with your focus at all, but it's a little too overstimulating, okay? So these are two examples that we're gonna work on right now on the fly to adjust the stack. So let's take the first example. You wanna be changing compounds one compound at a time. And looking at that particular stack, if there's an excessive stimulation to the point of it being harder to focus, the first thing I would change is the NALT, okay? So you've got 100 milligrams of NALT in that stack. First thing I'd do is I'd halve it. I'd take it down to 50 milligrams. Then run the stack again. Don't change anything else at this point. If you can't focus, don't change anything else. Just bring down that stimulation just a little bit. And by the way, you should be retrying the stack not the very next day, but the day after that. Like, give your brain one day in between trialing stacks. Hopefully have some other stacks that you've adjusted to take in the meantime, so that you're not constantly working on the same neurotransmitter systems. So then when you circle back to the stack, you've got 50 milligrams of NALT instead of 100, and then you have the rest of the stack. So the stack would look like this now. And that ends up slowing you down just enough where you can actually focus, okay? So you've made that adjustment, and now you're really happy with the stack. Done. It's finalized at this point. There's no more adjustments to make. You've created your target of stimulant energy and processing. There's nothing else to do. Set that stack aside in a stack that works and label it either on a notepad or on a Google document with tables. This is a good stack for stimulant energy and processing, and particularly works well for when I sit down and do X type of work. All right, let's take the second example. You took the stack as it was with 100 milligrams of NALT in it and the rest of the compounds, this stack right here, but it was too energy inducing, too stimulating to the point where you sort of felt edgy. Maybe you were like a little angry or short with people, or you weren't very comfortable. That can definitely happen. There's a point at which if you overstimulate, you kind of feel edgy and you feel a little anxious and just not comfortable. Instead of changing anything in this particular stack, I personally would bring in a balancer. We discussed this last night on the live stream. You should go watch it. It was yesterday, Monday, April 4th, on the Cortex Labs YouTube channel, where there is a case for bringing in balancers with stimulant energy stacks. It's not that they're canceling each other out. It's that you're bringing in something that'll actually help slow the stack down just a little bit and help you to get a streamlined effect. So in that particular case, all I would really do is add a balancer. My favorite balancer, quite honestly, is L-theanine. L-theanine. Brain GABA and brain serotonin right away. Within 20 minutes of administration, you're actually making more of those two chemicals in the brain. So I'd be adding, in this particular case, 100 milligrams of theanine. 100 milligrams of theanine. Again, not a high dose, not necessarily a low dose, just a modest dose of theanine, and then I would run the stack again 2 days later. Okay? If you run the stack again and you find out that it's pretty much, it's close to perfect, but now you're a little too chill and calm down, well then I would take the theanine dose down to 50 milligrams. On and on and on. We're really only adjusting one thing at a time, because really that's how it has to be done in order for you to understand, well, which adjustment actually made the difference. If you adjust two chemicals at a time, you're not gonna know what made the difference. You've gotta be isolating your adjustments to one compound. You try it again 2 days later with now 50 milligrams of theanine, now the stack hits really well. and is perfect for what you're trying to achieve. You've got stimulant energy and you have processing. It's not overstimulating you. It's not making it to the point where you can't focus. You've created the perfect nootropic stack that actually works. Finalized. That's finalization. You've gotten to the point where the stack works perfectly. Changing it would be a crime. There's nothing more that needs to be done. And now you have a stack that you can put in the reservoir, which then you should be labeling for what it helps you do. So that day, I mean, you wanted in your target to have stimulant energy and processing. But for what task? You know, where you're programming, where you're doing QuickBooks, where you're doing marketing work, where you're doing data entry, where you doing marketing videos, what were you doing, right? Understand what that stack helped you to do, and in your own notes, label that stack. This stack, you know, stack 4 helped me to focus on this, helped me in X task, okay? So that is just a basic framework, but an in-depth framework that shows you how to formulate from the ground up a targeted nootropic stack. Now, if you've done this correctly, now you have one stack. You've got one stack. And ideally, over the course of a 30-day period, you should have 20 plus stacks. And this may take you 2 months, 3 months, let's call it 2 months to ultimately formulate that, and that's okay. The biggest barrier to people getting good, consistent results from nootropics is their impatience to do things like this. Okay? Getting down to this granular level will save you literally years in using nootropics. It'll save you money on powder, and it'll put you in a place where if you're doing the hard work initially, which really isn't hard if you're using this framework, you will get to the point where you've got many high-level stacks that actually work and are very targeted to your brain a lot faster. And that is the goal, my friends. That is the point. Thank you so much for being with me. Remember, if you want access to the highest potency nootropic stack, expert level information on formulating and stacking nootropics for the best effects, or to work with me, the world's foremost expert on energy and brain performance hacking, check out the following. Either, number 1, the Cortex stack. I mean, either way, everybody should have the Cortex stack. Go buy Cortex, livecortex.com. Having it around to take when you need it is a smart idea. You get smarter, better, faster for free if you get Cortex on subscription right now at livecortex.com. The 3 echelons of our Nootropics courses are the following. Number 1, if you're new to nootropics, Nootropics Ground Zero. Brand new to nootropics, it's like right out of the gate. You're brand new. Get Nootropics Ground Zero and watch that video course, livecortex.com. If you're in a year or so, maybe even 6 months or 2 years, but want to ascend to the 6-year mark, higher level usage of nootropics, Nootropics Masterclass is the course that you have to get. Get that at livecortex.com. Go get it today if you fit in that category. Lastly, the highest level of nootropics courses that exist, we're talking about the 10 to 15 year mark. Ultra high echelon of using nootropics. Get the Nootropics God course. All 3 of these are video courses, and you can find them at livecortex.com. Lastly, if you'd like to have me, the world's foremost expert on brain and energy hacking, formulate and design your entire regimen, and work with you on an ongoing support capacity throughout, book a consult with me. There are many different options, and you can find those options at livecortex.com. Click on the consulting tab. Thank you so much for being with me, everybody. Talk to you next time.